I know this may come as a shock to you, but I am not somebody gifted with a great ability for interpersonal communication. I mean, I feel like most people kind of suck at that, whether it's keeping up with friends from time to time or loved ones or whatever. You know, my mom will call, I'll forget to get back for a couple of days, or I'll say the wrong thing. Don't worry, I have talked to her today, so that we've made progress. But I am not somebody that can pass judgment on the ability to communicate to other people effectively. But there is something that has been brewing, something I find like awkward and interesting because it's coming from a club that doesn't normally have these sorts of issues. It's like a bit of a crack in the armor, except that crack in the armor is like way off in the corner. Although it used to be like right in the center. This used to be one of those people that when you thought of Pep Guardiola and his genius, this is one of the guys that would come to mind as one of those players that he was utilizing in new and creative and exciting ways, like some sort of mad scientist, but without the crazy hair. And that guy's Cancelo, or Cancelo, or we're in the neighborhood. I think it's Cancelo. And either way, you know who I'm talking about, the fullback from Manchester City. And he is currently making a ruckus because he believes that he was treated unfairly. Now, the lore here, right, the nice background biography authored by yours truly, is that Cancelo was a very good player at Manchester City for a long time. Dude won a lot of trophies, and he did a really good job playing for Manchester City. And then at some point in the first half of last year, it really started to become apparent that Pep Guardiola was just not playing him a lot. Right? He was playing other guys, whether that be Nathan Ake or like Rico Lewis. The other guys were playing in the team, and Cancelo, once the beacon of inverted wingbacks or fullbacks or this new age kind of like fancy fullback that isn't a fullback at all sort of thing that he had going on there for a little while, that was fading. And obviously Pep Guardiola is still going to be Pep Guardiolaing all over the place, but it wasn't involving Cancelo as much. And it was in a way that was really surprising. I think to a lot of people, it was very surprising to me at the time, because when you have one of those players that is at that level and they're not 35 years old, typically they stay at that level. They stay at that level of involvement. So perhaps I should have known. Perhaps we should have known. We should have thrown on our oh God, what's his name? Our Sherlock Holmes cap. That didn't take me any time at all. We'll fix that with the magic of editing. My Sherlock Holmes cap. And figured out, it deduced, right, that there was something going on behind the scenes, right, because there had to be. But it looks like that the something going on behind the scenes was less about it was the effect. It wasn't the cause, it was the effect. Because Pep Guardiola recently came out, and this is not what happened most recently, but Pep Guardiola came out and said essentially that Cancelo was causing some issues in the dressing room, and that he was loaned out, if you didn't know, in January of 2023 to Bayern Munich until the summer, and he's been at Barcelona this year. And he's apparently, according to Cancelo, right, and everybody, he's accepted a wage cut in order to go to Barcelona this year. On loan from Manchester City, by the way, where he is under contract until the second coming, 2027, I think. He's under contract for like 3 more years from this point, which is incredibly awkward for all of this to be happening. But basically, Pep said he wasn't playing as much. He was causing issues, so we wanted to get him out the door in January. Well, Cancelo stuck his foot in the ground, reared back, and launched a counter right hand that connected today, where everybody grabbed one line from the headlines, for the headlines, said lies were told. Ooh, spicy. Let me grab my popcorn and let's read. See, Cancelo was asked about those reports, and, was he saddened by them? He said, I was, because it wasn't true. I think Man City was a bit ungrateful to me when they said that, because I was a very important player in the years I was there. I never failed in my commitment to the club, to the fans, and I always gave everything. I remember a time when I was robbed and attacked the next day I was playing at the Emirates against Arsenal. That's crazy. That's also like a crazy thing to just drop in on top there. Like, I know where he's coming from. Right. I don't, because I've never been robbed and attacked, right? Knocking on all the wood I can find. But like the idea that he had this horrible life thing happen to him and then he was back and playing the next day. And that's an idea of his commitment to Manchester City. But I don't think the statements that were coming out necessarily were doubting his commitment to Manchester City, just the fact that he was upset that he wasn't playing in the first half of the eventual treble-winning season last year. And he said, people only remember this because Mr. Guardiola has much more strength than me, talking about people only remember that he was disgruntled or something. And I prefer to keep to myself, which is ironic because he absolutely let loose here. I prefer to know that I am telling the truth and I feel fulfilled with what I did. I'm a transparent person. I never lie. Obviously, can't testify to that at all, but I don't know if I'd ever heard João Cancelo speak before. So it's always awkward when you've known about somebody for a long time, but you never really interacted before, like with them like this. But you might be looking at me and wondering, like, well, Zealand, why do you seem to not be fully on João Cancelo's side here, right? Because I'll never know the actual story. I'll never know how it actually goes, right? And he clearly was very dedicated to the club and passionate about playing for the club while he was there up to a certain point. But then he says something that kind of gives it away here. Like, I want to see if you guys like read this like hear this the same way that he's saying it. He says, certain things dictated that I was loaned to Bayern Munich last year. I have no regrets, even if City won the Champions League. I feel like I made the right choice, that I went to a club that really wanted me. Right now, that is, maybe it's unfair of me to take that, right? Like maybe it's unfair of me to take that sentence, right? That's been translated and project out that like, he is kind of telegraphing the fact that he was frustrated that he felt unwanted, right? Because the issue with him is initially is that he thinks that Pep Guardiola is lying about him being disgruntled about not playing. But then he comes out and says that I went to a club that really wanted me, implying that he was feeling unwanted, which is, kind of coming together here. I think almost all of this could be true at the same time. I think João Cancelo could have been upset about not playing, but also not been a problem or felt like he wasn't a problem, where Pep Guardiola noticed that he was upset about not playing and made it a bigger problem than it actually was. So maybe everybody's right here and this is just a giant misunderstanding. But clearly João Cancelo was not feeling 100% okay with Manchester City by the time he was loaned out with Bayern, because he was feeling like he was unwanted in the first place, which is kind of the whole point of where all of this came from. So is it true? Cancelo saying it wasn't true that he was being a distracting force, but is also kind of acknowledging that he was upset. So we're threading a really fine line here. And my head hurts. He did go on to say, life goes on. I wish everything goes well because while I was there, I enjoyed my football and my team. I feel like this is something that is going to be blown super out of proportion. I realize me sitting here and talking about that, it's probably going to contribute to that, but I'm really just trying to get to the bottom of this. I'm not trying to blow this out of proportion. I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think Cancelo's a bad guy. I don't think Pep's a bad guy. I think the way that everybody's acting in this situation makes complete sense, and I would probably be doing and saying almost exactly the same thing. I think it's just a tough spot to be in when you have these guys that are on really huge contracts that are getting paid a ton of money, and then all of a sudden the coach just kind of prefers a different approach or thinks they're maybe not playing as well as they were, goes in that direction. The guy feels like he had the rug pulled out from under him, while the coach feels like that person is starting to be a detracting force from the locker room because all of a sudden they're upset because obviously they were playing and now they're not. There's no real good way to handle that, and I think it just goes to show that's the case when you have a coach that's Pep Guardiola, who I think everybody could agree is a fantastic coach, that still clearly has had a significant miscommunication with what was once one of his pride and joy type players that was like exemplary of what he was trying to do at Manchester City. So João Cancelo says he wants to stay at Barcelona, but he's under contract at Manchester City until 2027, the summer of 2027. So this might not be the last of our little Mancunian soap opera. Goody. Glad everybody's happy now, though. That seems all right. Bye, guys.